Have you ever wondered how one small moment of kindness could completely transform your life? Picture this. A 35-year-old art teacher notices a soaking wet teenage boy counting pennies at her cafe counter. She discreetly pays for his meal, never expecting anything in return. A forgotten notebook reveals an artistic talent that takes her breath away. But within its pages lies a dark secret, words that chill her to the bone. Home is where no one hits you. What she discovers about this quiet boy will shake her to her core. A cruel guardian, a stolen childhood, a genius being systematically crushed. She makes a choice to help him, never realizing that karma has already set its wheels in motion. The boy she saves isn't just any talented teenager. He's someone whose gift will soon stun the art world. And the abusive uncle? He's about to meet someone from his past who's been hunting him for years. Sometimes the universe places exactly the right people in exactly the right place. A simple sandwich, a forgotten notebook, and 3 lives that will never be the same again. The bell above the cafe door chimed as the afternoon rush began to dwindle. Emily Fletcher wiped her hands on her apron and tucked a loose strand of honey-brown hair behind her ear. After 7 years of teaching art to middle schoolers and 4 years of weekend shifts at Riverside Cafe, she had mastered the art of the warm smile even when her feet ached. Just a regular day, she whispered to herself, a habit she'd developed to find gratitude in the mundane. Emily lived simply. Her small apartment decorated with student artwork, her car a decade old but reliable, her savings modest but growing. At 35, she had learned that wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in moments of connection. Rain pattered against the windows, transforming the ordinary street outside into a shimmering canvas. Emily loved days like this. They brought in customers seeking not just coffee but comfort. Mr. Hernandez sat in his usual corner with his chest set. Mrs. Patel savored her chai while grading papers, and the high school debate team huddled around their usual table, voices rising and falling with passionate arguments about climate policy. "Emily, order up," called Diane from the kitchen. Emily delivered plates of warm pastries to the debate team, who barely paused their discussion to thank her. She didn't mind. Their enthusiasm reminded her of why she became a teacher, to witness young minds catching fire with ideas. The bell chimed again. Emily turned to see a boy standing in the doorway, rain dripping from his oversized jacket. He hesitated, as if unsure whether to step fully inside or retreat back into the storm. Emily estimated he was about 14, though something in his eyes seemed older. His dark hair hung wet against his forehead, and his sneakers squeaked against the tile floor as he finally moved toward the counter. "Welcome to Riverside," Emily said, her voice gentle. She noticed how he hunched his shoulders slightly, how his eyes darted around the room before settling somewhere near, but not quite on her face. "Can I get you something warm on this rainy day?" The boy nodded, scanning the menu board with intensity. "How much is the turkey sandwich?" $7.50, Emily replied. "It comes with chips and a pickle." The boy began digging in his pockets, producing a collection of crumpled dollar bills and loose change. He spread the money on the counter and began counting silently, his lips moving slightly. Emily pretended to wipe down the nearby coffee station, giving him privacy while keeping him in her peripheral vision. His shoulders slumped. "I only have $5.87, he said quietly. "Sorry for wasting your time." He began scooping the coins back into his pocket. "Wait," Emily said. "We have a special today. Turkey sandwich with chips for $5.75. She kept her voice casual, as if this were a legitimate cafe promotion and not a spontaneous invention. Suspicion flickered across the boy's face. Really, Emily confirmed, reaching for an order pad. "Can I get a name for the order?" "Daniel," he said after a moment's hesitation. "Daniel Cooper." "Coming right up, Daniel." Emily slipped her own money into the register to cover the difference. It wasn't the first time she'd done this, and it wouldn't be the last. Her fellow teacher at Westlake Middle School, Priya Sharma, often teased her about adopting strays, human and animal alike. But Emily couldn't help it. She noticed people others overlooked. While preparing Daniel's sandwich, Emily observed him from behind the counter. He chose a small table by the window, removed a battered notebook from his backpack, and began writing or drawing. She couldn't tell which from this distance. His concentration was absolute, his wiry frame bent over the page as if protecting it. When she brought his food, Daniel quickly closed the notebook. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely audible over the cafe's ambient noise. "You're welcome," Emily replied. "Enjoy." She wanted to say more, to ask what he was working on or why he was alone in a cafe on a rainy Thursday afternoon when most kids his age would be at after-school activities. But years of teaching had taught her when to press and when to retreat. This moment called for retreat. Throughout her shift, Emily found her attention repeatedly drawn to Daniel's table. He ate slowly, methodically, as though making the food last. Between bites, he returned to his notebook, occasionally glancing up to study something or someone in the cafe before returning to the page. An hour passed. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof. Most customers left, rushing to cars with newspapers held over heads or unfurling umbrellas. Only Mr. Hernandez remained with his chess pieces and Daniel with his notebook. As Emily swept around tables, she noticed Daniel checking the time on the wall clock. His face tightened with what looked like worry. He packed his notebook, zipped his jacket, and approached the counter where Emily was refilling sugar dispensers. "Thanks again," he said, his voice stronger now. "It was a good sandwich." Emily smiled. "I'm glad. Stay dry out there." Daniel nodded and hurried out into the downpour without an umbrella or rain jacket. Through the window, Emily watched him break into a run, his thin frame quickly disappearing into the gray curtain of rain. "That boy left something," Mr. Hernandez called from his corner. Emily crossed to Daniel's table and found the notebook. She picked it up, intending to run after him, but he was long gone. The notebook was worn, its cover softened by use, the spiral binding slightly stretched. A name was written in the corner, Daniel C. Emily placed the notebook behind the counter. She would keep it safe until Daniel returned, which she hoped would be soon. The cafe would close in an hour, and she doubted he would come back before then. The rest of her shift passed uneventfully. After helping Diane close up, Emily found herself sitting in her car, the engine running but the vehicle parked, Daniel's forgotten notebook on the passenger seat. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective under the streetlights. Emily had checked inside the front cover for contact information, but found none. She should turn it in to the lost and found, she knew. Or leave it with Diane to return to Daniel when he came back. But something tugged at Emily's conscience. The memory of Daniel's careful attention to the notebook, the way he protected it from view. It seemed important. And if it contained schoolwork, he might need it immediately. Emily taught at Westlake Middle School, the only middle school within walking distance of the cafe. There was a good chance Daniel attended there, though she didn't recognize him from her art classes. She could check the school directory tomorrow and return it to him directly. Decision made, Emily drove home to her apartment complex on Maple Street. The building was nothing special, 3 stories of beige siding and modest balconies, but it was clean and safe and within her budget. Her neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez was walking her Pomeranian as Emily pulled into her parking spot. "Evening, Emily. No umbrella again? You'll catch your death one of these days." Emily laughed. "The rain stopped an hour ago, Mrs. R. Still, a prepared woman is never sorry," Mrs. Rodriguez replied with affectionate scolding before continuing her walk. Inside her apartment, Emily kicked off her shoes and dropped her keys in the ceramic bowl her students had made her for Teacher Appreciation Day 3 years ago. The space was small but distinctly hers, walls painted a soft sage green, bookshelves overflowing with art books and novels, plants thriving on every available surface, and student artwork framed with the same care others might reserve for famous masterpieces. She changed into comfortable clothes and settled on her couch with a cup of tea. Daniel's notebook sat on her coffee table. Emily stared at it, wrestling with her conscience. Opening it would be an invasion of privacy. But if there was homework inside, assignments due tomorrow, just the first page, she told herself. Just to see if there's contact information I missed. Emily opened the notebook carefully. What she saw made her breath catch. It wasn't schoolwork. The page contained a detailed drawing of the cafe, not as it appeared to the casual observer, but as only an artist would see it. Light spilled through windows in delicate hatching. The ancient espresso machine became a magnificent dragon breathing steam. Mr. Hernandez's wrinkled hands hovering over chess pieces were rendered with such precision that Emily could almost see them move. And in the corner, behind the counter, was Emily herself, depicted with a soft halo of light around her that transformed her ordinary features into something luminous. The skill was undeniable. This was not the work of an average 14-year-old. This was the work of someone with extraordinary talent and trained observation. Emily turned the page, her earlier reservations forgotten in the face of such unexpected beauty. The next drawing showed the street outside, raindrops captured in mid-fall, each one containing miniature reflections of the world around it. The perspective was unusual, as if the artist were looking up from below, perhaps from the height of a child. Emily continued turning pages, each one revealing scenes of ordinary life transformed through Daniel's eyes. An elderly woman feeding pigeons, her face kind but weary. Two children sharing headphones on a bus, their expressions rapturous. A homeless man sleeping on a bench, depicted with dignity rather than pity. Between the drawings were snippets of text. Not diary entries exactly, but observations, thoughts, fragments of what might be poems or stories. The handwriting was neat but compressed, as if trying to conserve paper. On the 10th page, Emily stopped, arrested by 6 words written in larger letters than the rest. Home is where no one hits you. Her heart constricted. As a teacher, she was trained to notice signs of abuse or neglect. This stark statement, surrounded by empty white space unlike the other densely filled pages, sent warning bells ringing through her mind. Emily closed the notebook and pressed her hand against its cover, as if she could reach through the pages to the boy who had created them. Tomorrow, she would find Daniel Cooper. She would return his notebook and somehow find a way to help him. That was her nature, to notice, to care, to act. It had always been both her greatest strength and, according to her ex-husband, her greatest weakness. "You can't save everyone, Emily," he had said during their final argument. "No," she had replied, "but I can try to help the ones who cross my path." And now Daniel Cooper, with his solemn eyes and extraordinary talent, had crossed her path. Emily didn't believe in coincidences. Tomorrow would bring answers, and perhaps a chance to make a difference in one young life. What Emily Fletcher couldn't possibly know was how profoundly her simple act of kindness, a discounted sandwich on a rainy day, would change not only Daniel's life but her own. Morning light filtered through the blinds as Emily prepared for her day at Westlake Middle School. Daniel's notebook sat on her kitchen counter while she sipped her coffee. The striking images from its pages had haunted her dreams. "First things first," she muttered, reaching for her phone. She scrolled through her contacts until she found Naomi Bennett, the school secretary who knew everything about everyone at Westlake. "Naomi, it's Emily Fletcher. I need a small favor." 10 minutes later, Emily had confirmation. Daniel Cooper was indeed a student at Westlake, an 8th grader who had transferred in just 3 months ago. He wasn't in any of Emily's art classes. He had been placed in advanced math and science tracks instead. His attendance record is spotty, Naomi had noted with concern. Nothing that triggers automatic reporting yet, but getting close. Emily tucked the notebook carefully into her bag. She would find Daniel during lunch period and return it to him personally. The morning classes passed in a blur of color theory and papier-mâché. Emily's students were working on self-portrait masks, always a revealing project that offered glimpses into how they saw themselves. Normally, this was her favorite unit, but today her thoughts kept drifting to Daniel and his remarkable drawings. When lunch period arrived, Emily made her way to the cafeteria. The familiar cacophony of adolescent voices, clattering trays, and squeaking sneakers greeted her as she scanned the crowded tables. It took 3 complete circuits before she spotted him. Seated alone at a corner table, bent over what appeared to be a textbook, a barely touched lunch tray pushed to the side. As Emily approached, she noticed how he had positioned himself, back to the wall, clear sightline to all entrances. It was a defensive posture she had seen before in other students, the ones who had learned early to be vigilant. "Daniel?" she said softly, stopping a respectful distance from his table. He looked up, confusion briefly crossing his face before recognition dawned. "You're the cafe lady." Emily smiled. "Emily Fletcher. I also teach art here at Westlake." She held out the notebook. "You left this yesterday." Daniel's eyes widened. His hand shot out to take it, then hesitated just before making contact. "Did you look inside?" Emily considered lying but decided against it. "I did. I opened it looking for contact information. But once I saw your work..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Daniel, your drawings are extraordinary." A flush crept up his neck. "They're just sketches," he mumbled, finally taking the notebook and quickly slipping it into his backpack. "They're far more than that." Emily pulled out the chair across from him. "May I sit for a moment?" Daniel shrugged, which Emily interpreted as permission. She sat, noting the way he subtly angled his body away from her. "You have real talent, Daniel." The kind that deserves training and development. Have you ever taken formal art classes? Not really. His voice was quiet but not timid. I just notice things and draw them. You more than notice. You see. Emily leaned forward slightly. Why aren't you in any of the art classes here? Daniel's fingers tapped a restless rhythm on his textbook. My uncle says art is a waste of time. When we moved here, he told the counselor to put me in classes that could lead to a real job. Your uncle? Emily prompted. Thomas Cooper. I live with him since my parents died. The straightforward way he delivered this devastating information made Emily's heart constrict. No dramatic revelation, no tears, just a simple statement of fact, as if he were commenting on the weather. I'm so sorry, Daniel. He shrugged again. It was 4 years ago. Car accident. Emily recognized the tone. She had heard it before from students carrying burdens too heavy for their years. The flat effect that disguised pain too deep to access safely. Is your uncle here in Riverside with you? Daniel nodded. He got a construction job. That's why we moved. Before Emily could ask another question, the bell rang. Daniel immediately stood, gathering his things with practiced efficiency. I have to get to biology, he said. Of course. But Daniel. Emily reached into her purse and pulled out a business card with her name and phone number. If you ever want to talk about your art or anything else, I'm here. The cafe or school, either one. Daniel looked at the card for a long moment before taking it. He didn't say thank you, didn't make any promises to call. He simply nodded once and walked away, disappearing into the river of students flooding the hallway. Emily watched him go, the conversation replaying in her mind. Something wasn't right. The notebook confession. Home is where no one hits you. Combined with Daniel's guarded demeanor and his mention of an uncle who considered art a waste of time, set off warning bells in her teacher's intuition. Back in her classroom, preparing for her afternoon students, Emily made a decision. She would check the school records for Daniel's address. It wasn't strictly protocol, but as a teacher concerned about a student's welfare, she could justify it if questioned. After her final class, Emily slipped into the administrative office. Naomi was gone for the day, but her computer was still logged in. A common occurrence as Naomi often stepped out to deliver end-of-day messages. Emily quickly searched the student database and jotted down Daniel's address. 1457 Willow Creek Road, apartment 3B. Emily knew the area. Willow Creek Apartments was a rundown complex on the outskirts of town, known for its transient population and neglectful management. It wasn't dangerous, exactly, but it wasn't the nurturing environment a talented 14-year-old deserved. That evening, instead of heading straight home, Emily drove to Willow Creek Road. She told herself she was just getting a feel for Daniel's home situation, not crossing any inappropriate boundaries. Teachers often drove by students' neighborhoods, didn't they? It was part of understanding their lives. The apartment complex was a series of 2-story buildings arranged around a central courtyard that had once contained a playground, but now featured only a broken swing set and an overflowing dumpster. Emily parked across the street, watching as residents came and went. Most looked tired, wearing the uniform of the working poor, food service attire, custodial jumpsuits, retail name tags. She was about to leave when she spotted Daniel emerging from one of the ground floor units. He carried a trash bag to the dumpster, his movements quick and efficient. As he turned to head back, a man appeared in the doorway of the apartment, tall, heavy-set, with the muscular build of someone who worked in construction. He was saying something to Daniel, his posture aggressive even from a distance. Emily couldn't hear the words, but she saw Daniel's immediate response, shoulders hunching, head lowering, pace quickening. The body language of someone accustomed to navigating another's anger. The man, Thomas Cooper, she presumed, grabbed Daniel's arm as the boy passed him. Even from across the street, Emily could see his fingers digging into Daniel's thin bicep. He pulled the boy roughly inside, and the door slammed shut. Emily sat frozen in her car, heart pounding. What had she just witnessed? Was it abuse or just a stern guardian's discipline? The line could be blurry, and misinterpreting could cause more harm than good. She debated calling Child Protective Services, but hesitated. Without clear evidence, a report might not go anywhere. Worse, if investigated and dismissed, it could make Daniel's situation at home even more precarious. Emily started her car but didn't drive away immediately. Instead, she reached into her glove compartment and pulled out a small notebook of her own. Not filled with extraordinary art like Daniel's, but with lesson plans and grocery lists and the mundane details of her life. She wrote down the date and time and described exactly what she had seen. Documentation was important, she knew. If there was a pattern, she would need evidence. For the next week, Emily watched for Daniel at school. He attended irregularly, present for 2 days, absent the next, then back again. When present, he was quiet, keeping to himself, completing assignments with minimal interaction. He didn't visit the café again. On Friday afternoon, Emily was surprised to find him waiting outside her classroom after the final bell. "Daniel," she said, unable to hide her pleasure at seeing him. "Come in." He entered cautiously, glancing around at the student artwork displayed on the walls. His backpack looked fuller than usual, bulging awkwardly. "I wanted to ask you something," he said, his voice steady despite the nervous way his fingers played with the strap of his backpack. "Is there somewhere at school I could keep some things? Things I don't want to take home." Emily's concern deepened. "What kind of things?" Daniel unzipped his backpack and carefully removed several folded papers. He handed them to Emily without explanation. She unfolded them to find more of his drawings, even more impressive than those in his notebook. These were larger, more detailed, executed with different media: pencil, charcoal, what appeared to be borrowed or scavenged art supplies. "Daniel, these are amazing," she breathed. One depicted an elderly woman with deep wrinkles and kind eyes, rendered with such empathy that Emily felt she knew this woman. Another showed a young child laughing, the joy radiating from the page through masterful use of light and shadow. The third was darker, a pair of hands with scarred knuckles grasping what appeared to be a beer bottle, menace implicit in every tense line. "My uncle found my notebook," Daniel said flatly. He wasn't happy. Emily looked up sharply. "What happened?" Daniel shrugged, but the careful blankness of his expression told Emily more than words could. He said drawing was for failed artists and gay guys. The slur rolled off Daniel's tongue with the clear inflection of quotation. He threw it in the trash. "I got it out later, but—" He trailed off. "But now you're afraid to keep your work at home," Emily finished for him. Daniel nodded. "I can't stop drawing. I've tried. It's like—" He searched for words. "Like breathing. But he gets mad when he sees it." "How mad, Daniel?" Emily asked gently. The boy's eyes flickered away. "Mad enough." The implication hung in the air between them. Emily thought of the man she had seen grabbing Daniel's arm, the notebook confession about home being where no one hits you. "Yes," she said firmly. "You can keep your art supplies and work here. I have a cabinet that locks." She pointed to a tall metal cabinet in the corner of her classroom. "I'll give you your own shelf and the combination to the lock. You can access it before school, during lunch, or after school." Relief washed over Daniel's face. "Thank you," he said, the words carrying more weight than such simple syllables should bear. Emily opened the cabinet and cleared a shelf. "This is yours now," she said, handing him a piece of paper with the combination written on it. "I trust you'll only use it for your art supplies." Daniel nodded solemnly. Then, surprising them both, he reached into his backpack again and pulled out a small package wrapped in newspaper. "I made this," he said, holding it out to Emily, "for paying for my sandwich that day, and for not telling anyone about my notebook." Emily took the package, touched beyond words. She unwrapped it carefully to reveal a small, handcrafted wooden box. The lid was carved with an intricate design of flowering vines. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "I made it in wood shop," Daniel explained. "The teacher lets me use the tools during lunch sometimes." Emily opened the box to find a folded paper inside. She removed it and discovered a portrait of herself, not as she appeared in mirrors, but as Daniel saw her. In his rendering, she was luminous, her ordinary features transformed by kindness. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel, this is the most thoughtful gift I've ever received." He ducked his head, embarrassed by her emotion. "It's nothing special. It's extraordinary," she countered. "Just like your talent." A flush crept up his neck, but Emily caught the ghost of a smile, the first she had seen from him. It transformed his solemn face, revealing the child beneath the carefully maintained armor. The moment was broken by the harsh ring of Daniel's phone. He pulled it from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and his face immediately closed off again. "I have to go," he said, shoving the remaining artwork onto the shelf. "My uncle needs me to help with something." "Of course. The cabinet will be here whenever you need it." Daniel nodded and hurried out, the weight of his responsibilities visibly settling back onto his narrow shoulders. Emily sat at her desk long after he had gone, the wooden box cradled in her hands, her mind churning with worry and a growing sense of anger. A child with Daniel's talent should be nurtured, celebrated, given every opportunity to develop his gifts, not hiding his artwork in fear of punishment. She had taken a first step in helping him today, but Emily knew it wasn't enough. Thomas Cooper's apparent hostility toward his nephew's artistic inclinations might be just the tip of a much more troubling iceberg. As she finally gathered her things to leave, Emily made a silent promise to the boy who saw the world with such extraordinary vision. She would find a way to help him, not just with his art, but with whatever shadows were darkening his young life. Daniel Cooper had crossed her path, and Emily Fletcher wasn't one to ignore such encounters. What she couldn't know was that karma, that great cosmic ledger of actions and consequences, had already begun its inexorable work, setting in motion events that would alter both their lives forever. The Saturday morning crowd at Riverside Café buzzed with weekend energy. Emily wiped down tables with mechanical precision, her mind still occupied with Daniel Cooper and his troubling home situation. 2 weeks had passed since she'd offered him the cabinet in her classroom. He'd been using it regularly, his collection of artwork growing alongside Emily's concern. "You're a million miles away today," Diane commented, sliding past with a tray of fresh pastries. Emily forced a smile. "Just thinking about a student." The bell above the door chimed. Emily turned, greeting ready on her lips, but the words died when she saw who had entered. Thomas Cooper filled the doorway, his construction workers billed intimidating in the cozy cafe space. Behind him, Daniel stood with his gaze fixed on the floor. "So this is where you've been spending your time," Thomas said loudly to Daniel, his eyes scanning the cafe before landing on Emily. Recognition flickered across his face. "You're the teacher. The art teacher." Emily straightened. "Emily Fletcher. Can I help you with something?" Thomas approached the counter, leaving Daniel by the door. "Yeah, you can stop filling my nephew's head with garbage about being an artist." His voice carried across the now hushed cafe. "Found your card in his pocket. Saw those drawings you've been encouraging." Emily's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. "Daniel has extraordinary talent. I've simply offered him a space to develop it." Thomas leaned forward. Emily could smell alcohol on his breath despite the early hour. "He doesn't need to develop anything except skills that'll get him a real job. His parents left him with nothing but debt, and I'm stuck raising him. Last thing he needs is some do-gooder teacher telling him he's special." From the corner, an elegant older woman with silver hair looked up from her newspaper. Emily recognized her as Victoria Blackwood, a regular customer who always ordered a pot of Earl Grey and a scone. "The boy needs structure," Thomas continued, his voice rising. "Not your interference." "I understand your concern," Emily said, fighting to remain professional. "But perhaps we could discuss this privately?" "Nothing to discuss. Stay away from my nephew. Keep your art garbage to yourself." Thomas turned to Daniel. "Let's go." As they headed for the door, Victoria Blackwood spoke clearly. "Mr. Cooper?" "Thomas Cooper from Cooper Construction." Thomas paused, squinting at her. "Do I know you?" Victoria stood, smoothing her expensive blazer. "No, but I know you. You're the contractor who convinced my mother to pay up front for renovations you never completed." "Evelyn Blackwood on Lakeview Drive?" The color drained from Thomas's face. "I don't know what you're talking about, lady." "Interesting," Victoria said, approaching them. "Because I have copies of checks made out to you, contracts with your signature, and photographs of the substandard materials you used before abandoning the job." She smiled thinly. "Mother was too embarrassed to pursue legal action, but as her power of attorney, I've been building a case. You've done this to at least 7 elderly homeowners in 3 counties. The cafe had gone completely silent. Emily watched the confrontation unfold, scarcely breathing. Thomas's face contorted with anger. "You're making this up." "Am I?" Victoria removed a business card from her purse. "Victoria Blackwood, State Attorney General's Office, Elder Fraud Division. And you, Mr. Cooper, are the subject of an active investigation." Thomas took an aggressive step toward Victoria. "You can't prove anything." "Actually," Emily interjected, finding her voice, "I can support her case." She turned to Victoria. "I've been documenting concerning behaviors regarding his treatment of Daniel. I'd be willing to testify." Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something else, hope perhaps. Thomas lunged toward Emily. "You nosy bitch. You've been spying on me." Before he could reach her, 2 male customers stepped between them. "Time for you to leave," one said firmly. "This isn't over," Thomas snarled, backing toward the door. Daniel, come on! But Daniel didn't move. He stood frozen, eyes darting between Emily, Victoria, and his uncle. Daniel! Thomas barked. No, Daniel whispered, then louder, no. I'm staying. Thomas's face darkened. You ungrateful little. Mr. Cooper, Victoria interrupted. Your next words could significantly impact the charges against you. I suggest you leave. Now. For a moment, it seemed Thomas might explode with rage. Then, with a final glare at Daniel, he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the bell nearly fell from its hook. The café remained silent for several beats before conversation cautiously resumed. Emily rushed to Daniel, who stood trembling. Are you okay? She asked softly. He nodded, though he was clearly shaken. What happens now? Victoria approached them. That depends. Emily, would you truly be willing to provide testimony about Thomas Cooper's behavior toward his nephew? Absolutely, Emily confirmed. I've been keeping detailed records. Victoria turned to Daniel. And you, young man, would you be willing to tell the truth about your home life? Daniel hesitated, then straightened his shoulders. Yes, ma'am. Then for now, Victoria said. We need to find you a safe place to stay. 3 hours later, after conversations with police and emergency social services, Daniel was placed in temporary foster care with the Ramirez family, who had worked with the system for years and were known for their compassion. Victoria, it turned out, wasn't just with the Attorney General's office. She was also the director of the prestigious Blackwood Academy for the Arts, founded by her family generations ago. Emily, Victoria said as they left the police station, bring me Daniel's portfolio on Monday. If he's as talented as you say, we may have a place for him. Monday afternoon found Emily sitting beside Daniel in Victoria's elegant office as the older woman examined his work in reverent silence. In 30 years, Victoria finally said, I've seen perhaps 3 students with this level of raw talent. She looked at Daniel. You see the world differently, don't you? Daniel nodded cautiously. The Blackwood Academy offers full scholarships to exceptional students, Victoria continued, including boarding for those who need it. Would that interest you, Daniel? The boy's eyes widened. You mean live at a school? And just draw? Victoria smiled. Not just draw. Study all subjects, but with special focus on developing your artistic gifts. We've produced some of the finest artists in the country. What about my uncle? Daniel asked quietly. Your uncle, Victoria said firmly, will be facing multiple fraud charges. The evidence we collected over the weekend is substantial. And with Emily's documentation of his treatment of you, custody will likely be permanently removed. Daniel looked at Emily, eyes glistening. You did all this because I couldn't pay for a sandwich? Emily shook her head. I did this because I recognized something special in you. Something that deserves a chance to grow. 6 months later, Emily received an invitation to the Blackwood Academy's spring exhibition. Daniel's name was featured prominently in the program. She dressed carefully for the occasion, excited to see how he had progressed. The Academy's gallery was filled with proud parents and art enthusiasts. Emily wandered through the displays until she found Daniel's section, a series of portraits that took her breath away. Ms. Fletcher, Daniel's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him transformed, standing taller, eyes brighter, the haunted look replaced by confidence. Daniel, your work is amazing. He smiled, a full, genuine smile that reached his eyes. There's one more piece I want you to see. He led her to a covered canvas. This one's special. Daniel removed the cloth to reveal a portrait of Emily at the café counter, light surrounding her like a halo. The plaque beside it read, My guardian angel, the woman who saw me when no one else did. Emily's eyes filled with tears as Daniel explained. It won the National Young Artists Competition. It's going to be displayed in galleries across the country. He paused, then added softly. And the prize money is enough to pay off your student loans. Daniel, no, I can't accept that. Please, he insisted. You saved my life. Victoria told me you were drowning in debt from your own art school dreams. Now you can pursue them too. As they stood together before the portrait, Emily realized that karma had indeed worked its mysterious balance. Her small act of kindness, a $7 sandwich, had not only changed Daniel's life, but had unexpectedly circled back to change hers as well. Sometimes the simplest acts of compassion create the most profound ripples, touching lives in ways we could never imagine.